Hey guys, welcome to another ranking video. I try and do these ranking videos of all the eyeshadow palettes that I have tested for like the previous quarter. So I try and post them at the very beginning of the new quarter, which would have been at the beginning of October, but a lot of stuff was going on, so I wasn't able to do that. I do have 15 palettes today that I want to go over ranking from worst to best. I am wearing my favorite on my eyes today. It's a pretty neutral smoky look, but this palette is super versatile. I am also gearing up to do my full eyeshadow ranking at the very end of the year, or probably the beginning of 2025, to go over all of the eyeshadow palettes that I have tested for the year of 2024. But without further ado, you guys, let's start off at the bottom of the worst palette that I tried from last quarter, and we'll work our way to the best. So coming in at number 15 was from Klarity Kosmetics. It was the Bloom palette. I don't know if all of these palettes are still available for sale. A lot of these are from indie brands. I have like one new release that's from a high-end or luxury brand, but most of these are indie brands. Again, some are new releases, but a lot of them are from hauls that I did. So this Bloom palette comes in the bottom, not because of color story, but honestly just because of quality. With Klarity Kosmetics, I get a lot of hit and misses. And they do some really strange things in some of their formulas. Like for example, this shade right here is chunky and it feels like sand. And in some of their palettes, I do find a lot of shimmers that have that very similar texture. They're just very sandy and gritty, and then they don't stick. These shades are also super similar. I feel like this shade right here, the one that came broken, is also like super gritty. And I feel like these two shades right here ended up hard panning on me like immediately. And then the other deeper shades here, they just got really patchy. So again, it wasn't a color story issue. I like this color story. It's green, blue, purple, which isn't something that I reach for all the time, but I liked it enough that I wanted to get it. And I have liked Klarity Kosmetics palettes in the past, but there have again been some hit and misses. It's never just been like, oh, I love their formula. But this was the last palette of theirs that I tried, and honestly, I've just been done buying their new releases. I'm not interested in buying any more because the formula, again, is just so off and on again, and then this palette was a really bad experience. Again, the hard panning, the fact that there was some similar shades, the gritty texture, I should call it sandy texture, of the shimmers and the patchiness. This was just overall like an easy land in the bottom spot. I didn't enjoy this. And this is not a palette that I'm gonna end up holding on to. All right, coming in at number 14, I kind of hate to do this. It's a little palette from AOA Studio. It's the 9 color Cherry Blossom eyeshadow palette, and the color story I think is Hirosaki. It isn't a bad formulation. It's not even a bad color story either. It's just kind of boring and basic. I picked this up to test the eyeshadow formula from AOA Studio because I'm pretty sure I ended up getting this palette for a whole $1. All of their stuff is super affordable, very inexpensive. And the mattes here performed really well. The satins here are not overly light reflecting, but some of them are nicely pigmented and pretty impactful. And so they're nice, they're just like satins. It's just kind of a basic neutral palette. It didn't like knock my socks off per se. You know, I have tested so many indie formulas and so many other great formulas that a palette like this was just like meh, you know? So it landed in the bottom simply because it's not like an outstanding palette, but I didn't think that it was bad. It's a decent travel palette. It's just that these are all deep or mid-tone shimmers. This one in the corner here is translucent. It doesn't really show up, so that may have kind of knocked it down a little bit for me as well. So anyway, landed in the 14 spot just because it's kind of an overall basic palette. Coming in at number 13 is another palette from AOA Studio, and this one I liked a little bit better because these shimmers are delectable. It's an all shimmer palette and it's like a gradient, but again, it's kind of like these satins, so they're very pigmented. I do think that the lightest shade in here though is pretty light reflecting. I actually thought this was a really decent formula too. If you guys see the swatches, they do get pretty intense. Again, it's kind of a shame to put this palette here because it is nice, but it is an all satin shimmer palette. There's no mattes in here. I don't wear this by itself. And I have standalone shimmer formula palettes that are better in my collection from indie brands and things like that, that this is maybe not a palette that I think about reaching for, but I don't think was bad. And again, it was $1. So I don't think you can go wrong with stuff like this. It's great for travel and things like that. And these were way better formulaed shimmers than the other one that I tested, and it's not bad overall. I thought that they were nicely pigmented again. They had some pizzazz to them. They had some flair. I'm not gonna lie. For $1, they had some flair. All right, coming in the next spot is a palette from Ace Beauté. This is their Flare palette. I again hate to put this where I did because I am a really big Ace Beauté formula fan overall, I think. I know that they were talking about rebranding and reformulating, and I don't know if this is a reformulated palette from the original reformulation or not. And I like the color story. It's a little bit brighter, but you get like one brown shade here, so you can go kind of neutral, and then one grayish taupe shade. The reason this got put where it is, I think it's for 2 reasons. One is that it's not an overall color story that I love, and so I can't reach for it all the time. But 2, it's really the shimmer formula. They're really pigmented shimmers, and they take over the mattes. And so every single time I was using a shimmer, it was just swallowing the matte whole. They weren't blending together well. And so it's a nice palette if you like to just use the shimmer, maybe. But again, they weren't cohesive. They didn't blend really well together. This shimmer over here looks gorgeous, like something I could wear every single day, but it just looked funny. It's not like the same tone once it gets to the eyes. It looked really funny on me. And I really don't even know what it was about. It was just something about like the color. It didn't look how it looks in the pan. So it was more of a formulation of the shimmers just kind of taking over the mattes. The formula here is really good quality. The mattes are really pigmented. They're very blendable. They don't over blend. They're nice quality matte formula. It's just, I didn't like the shimmers and the mattes together. That's pretty much it. And it's not a palette that I reach for all the time because of that color story. All right, the next one up, I feel like I didn't think it was gonna land where it did. I had my eye on this palette for so long. So it was a little bit of a letdown, a little bit of a disappointment for me once I finally picked it up because it was a re-release. It's the Dragon Fruit palette from Kleona Cosmetics in collaboration with Emily Violet Marie. This is an all shimmer palette, and it's pink, green, purple color story. So a lot of shimmer colors that I would normally wear here. So it's not necessarily a color story thing for me. It's kind of a formulation thing. And also there are only 4 shimmers in this palette that I feel like are shifty and I really enjoy. I think you'll probably see them on the swatches. The rest of them are a little less impactful, more satin. I didn't find that I loved mixing the satin shades with the nice shimmer shades, and I believe there's only 1 multi-chrome in here. So the 4 shades that I really like are Bubbles, Dragantini, Fruit Fizz, and Effervescent. Those are the 4 shades that I love, and I literally could have done without the rest of the palette. So when I was pairing this with another matte palette, I was grabbing for one of those 4 shimmers. I just didn't like the other ones because again, they're kind of satins. Originally, I said that I liked that they threw satins in here so that you could use those satins as mattes if you wanted to, so you could use this palette as a standalone, but then I just didn't end up loving that. I didn't like that kind of bright, fruity look together. So then I started pairing it with a matte palette. And again, I was just reaching for those 4 shimmer shades because they were the most shifty, the most impactful. And I feel like for a palette of this price point, it's all shimmer. I don't know. I wanted to fall in love with more of these shades and I just didn't overall. This was kind of one of those like things that I hyped up in my mind that just didn't live up to the hype that I gave it. It's good. I love my Cleona singles. I could have done without this palette. I like being able to pick and choose the singles from Cleona that are like my shade preference and all that. Yeah, so there you go. Those are my thoughts on that one. All right, coming up next is from a brand that just closed. They just announced their closure. It's Bel Cosmetics. This was the Cool Summer palette. I was really sad to hear it because I was just starting to really get into itsBel Cosmetics, and this was like super heavily discounted at the time when I got it because it was fading out. It's a bright, fun, kind of pastel-y color story. There are some deeper colors in here. There are some, I think, one black based shimmer, which is this one right here, which I personally love. And then there's some pinky shades that are everyday wearable. I wear a lot of pinks every day. So if there's a pink in here and it's a light pink and not like a bright pink, I can use this on an everyday basis. So it's not a color story that I would steer away from Monday through Friday. And the shimmer formula is really nice. The shimmers are all fabulous in their own way. Each one of them I really enjoy. But if I'm being totally honest, I'm only reaching for those pink shades Monday through Friday. I'm not necessarily wearing the greens, blues, and like the minty colors on a weekly basis. And so that's why this lands where it is. Color Story alone. Although the Color Story is the reason that I got it, just to have something bright and pastel-y, and because I loved itsBel Cosmetics formula, so I can't hate on it for the Color Story because I chose it. It is what it is. But at the same time, it still prevents me from grabbing for it for the other shades other than the pink shades Monday through Friday. And the shimmers here weren't so special that there was something in here I needed to wear Monday through Friday. So I'm really sad that they did end up closing. I think itsBel Cosmetics was out of Puerto Rico, yes. I think they were in business for about 4 years. I don't really know the whole story as to why she decided to close, but there had to have been a good reason. Again, it's really sad because this is a formula that I was really enjoying. And I have other palettes in my collection from itsBel Cosmetics, but sad to say goodbye. Okay, coming up next is a new release. It's a little quad from YSL. This was the Mini Clutch, and this one was in 800 was the Color Story. So not part of the original launch. This one is more recent and still listed new on Sephora in this particular Color Story in 800. First time trying a YSL formula. These are good. These are good. These are very everyday, nice. You get one shimmer that's a little bit more satin, and then you get one sparkly shimmer. It's good for a luxury brand eyeshadow. I'm not going to say that it's not. It's just a one-trick pony. That's all it is, a one-trick pony. I'm using the same shades over and over again. So if I'm looking for an everyday neutral look, great little palette, good to travel with if I want to do the same eye look over and over again. Decent quality. The mattes here are a little bit desaturated. The pillowy texture of the mattes though is delicious. They're very creamy, they're very soft, they blend well, but they are a little bit desaturated. They're just not like super intensely pigmented. I will say that the sparkly shade is just kind of that, you know, it's a topper. It doesn't have like a super strong base to it. Don't mind my Halloween spider that someone at the office put on me. It is nice. It's not like lovely all on its own necessarily. I kind of put it over the brown shade. So good formula, different formula, I think. Nice and super duper creamy. But again, it's just a one-trick pony. Okay, coming up next is another one that I feel like I hyped up in my mind. And it's a brand that I absolutely love. Their office is very close to me. I do have a discount code with this brand. It's Carry Megan to save you 10% off. It'll be listed in my affiliate discount codes in the description box. This is the Molten Chromes eyeshadow palette from Bella Beauté Bar. This is an all shimmer 6-pan palette. The thing with Bella Beauté Bar is usually you get all different formulations. You get some that are softer, some that are a little bit more chunky and foiled and shifty and. But there's 3 shades in here that I like. Same situation as the Dragon Fruit palette. I just don't love all these shimmers. And I feel like with a all shimmer palette that's only 6 pans that retailed for, I want to say this was like $69, you guys. It was expensive. I want to love all of them, and I didn't. The thing is, even though they all look like they're very chunky foiled shades, they all rub out super soft. Like super soft. There's no extra chunkiness once I get these to the lid, so that I do like. I want to say my 3 favorite shades are Heat, Molten, and Bake. But I also like Dissolve. It's like a bright yellow shade, but I could take it or leave it on that one. I have other yellow shimmers that are pretty nice too. That's not my favorite yellow shimmer, but I am a big fan of yellow shimmers overall. And I think you kind of gotta be with this particular palette because it's primarily orange, yellow, and you've got like 2 pinky purples, and that's pretty much it with this. So these are all like super lightly translucent or light based shimmers. None of them are deep base shimmers, so they're more everyday wearable, and that I liked about it. But I'm somebody who does like a dark or black based shimmer or brown based shimmer. Not that this palette needed to be that, but again, the other shimmer, the ones that I didn't mention, just aren't unique enough for this to have ranked higher, especially for the price point. So I love 3 out of the 6 shimmers, gave you my thoughts on it. Honestly, I probably could have done without this palette. There are so many other Bella Beauté Bar palettes that I love, and she does mattes fabulously, that this price point here, I didn't fall in love with the entire shimmer collection of this little baby 6-pan for the price point. All right, coming up next is from Unearthly Cosmetics. It's the Don't Be Jelly palette. This one is the remastered version. I really do like the Unearthly Cosmetics formula. A lot of these are like translucent duochromes and multichromes, and so they're usually fun, especially for using on the inner corner and things like that, or just even over a deep based matte shade. And I like the formula of this. Everything blends really well. I liked the shimmer formula. I like Unearthly Cosmetics, and I don't think this is like the most expensive palette I've purchased from her either. The color story here just kind of prohibits me from wearing this all the time. I was finding myself reaching for like this deep purple shade and then grabbing for all these shimmers throughout the day so that I could keep testing it. But I wasn't loving all of the shades together. That's kind of the thing. You're just gonna get like a bright look with this palette. I think overall, they don't pair super well together. It's kind of like you get one shimmer with one matte and kind of down columns. Oh, there goes my son screaming. It is Sunday. So I like the fact that it makes sense in that way. If you're looking down the columns, then you really can see like one shimmer to one matte, with the exception of, oh my gosh, I'm trying to do this like in a mirror basically, with the exception of this one right here. So it's nice. Again, I'm just not pairing any of the mattes together on an everyday basis to like fade them in. It's mostly just like putting two colors together that don't necessarily belong and making a colorful look, which prevents me from grabbing for it all the time. But that's pretty much it. I do like the quality in here. I think it's just mostly a color story thing for me. And let me clarify, I like bright looks. Like if you look at my channel, I do some bright looks and I don't mind it at all. It's when I buy these palettes, you know, I look at a color story and I think, ooh, I could pair those two shades together. I could see a look in a color story online or looking at the swatches or whatever. And then sometimes when you get it here and you're looking at it and you're playing with it, you're like, ooh, yeah, no, those don't look so great together. And that's kind of how it ends up playing out. Once I start putting these to my eyes and they don't work out exactly the way that I was hoping. And part of it is just how I create an eye look, not necessarily like the color story just wasn't right. It's how I see and how I like to create looks that guides my way of thinking about a color story and how functional it is for me. So anyway, I thought I would clarify that. Next up is from Nomad Cosmetics. It's the Ghost Town USA palette. I had a hard time with these three palettes, putting them where I think they needed to be ranked, because I had my eye on this one also for a super long time, and you guys may know it was sold out and it just came back, I think October 1st or September 1st. And I liked the neutrality of this, and at the time I hadn't tested any of the Nomad Cosmetics formula. And someone made a comment on one of my videos that the palette is very safe, and it is. And I think that if you like to do eye looks that are a little bit brighter and you have to go into the office, I think you need a variety in your collection. You gotta have some palettes that are pretty safe and then have some for your own personal use. You know, if you have a job that you have to go into the office and you can't wear crazy eye looks. But I think this palette can do both. I think you can go deep with the teals, but I think you can go neutral with the greens and the browns on it every day. It's also got like a purple shimmer in here that's kind of shifty that I probably wouldn't wear on an everyday basis. I don't know though. You might catch me wearing this to the office, okay? If you ask the people in the office, they'll probably tell you I wear purple shimmers all the time. The quality of the mattes is really nice, very blendable. I think this whole palette is desaturated though. None of these shades are overly pigmented, even the turquoise shades. And that's just its vibe. It's just a little bit more desaturated and smoky and ghost townish. I don't know if that's a thing, but that's kind of what it feels like. So it had a purpose. It was meant to be a little bit more desaturated. The shimmers though, they didn't blow my mind. And I think that looking at them, they're all gonna be the same in every Nomad Cosmetics palettes because all the shimmers look the same. I could be wrong. And I do have two other palettes to still test, but all these shimmers are the same formula. They're a little bit sparkly. They're not overly light reflecting necessarily, and they're just the same formula over and over again, which is kind of nice again if you're looking for a safe palette. The quality here, you can't deny, was decent and all of that good stuff. So yeah, those are my thoughts, you guys. Okay, next up again was another one that I had a hard time deciding between the Don't Be Jelly palette, the Nomad Cosmetics, and then this one, the Give Me Glow Haunted Pumpkin palette. And the reason is this formula is just superior to the other two. It's rich and beautiful and distinctly delicious. It's just that the color story on this one is limiting because it's a brown, orange, and kind of green color story. So it's like 3 looks max, maybe? When I'm using more than one of the mattes, I feel like I'm just kind of getting 3 looks. And there's 3 shimmers to 7 mattes. I did say that I like the ratio, but I have to say if there was like one more shimmer, it would be great. Although these shimmers are delicious and beautiful. These shimmers are so pigmented and the mattes are so pigmented, but yet they are so blendable and they don't skip, and the performance is fabulous. The shades are long lasting. Everything about the Give Me Glow formula always knocks my socks off, and I feel like their shimmer formula is like this super creamy yet tacky, not foily, very sparkly formula that is unmatched in my collection. I know the Give Me Glow shimmer formula. You gotta do it differently for me to feel like I know the Give Me Glow shimmer formula and it's always delicious. And I talk about their shimmer formula every single freaking time. So I love the quality of this. Again, I think it was just kind of like a limiting color story, but I liked the quality enough that it had to be above the other 2, even though the other 2 are way more versatile. So if you guys haven't tried the Give Me Glow Cosmetics formula, I swear, like, find a color story that you like and give it a go, because these are delish. All right, we are down to our top 4. I don't know why I didn't say top 5, but my last deck is 4, so there you go. The next one up in 4th place is from Gourmande Girls. It's the Haunted palette in collaboration with Doodles by the Bunny. I had to give it to this spot because in application, this palette was just so much more beautiful than it looked in the pan. Not that this is a bad color story, but you get variety here and everything just works well together. And it's still a palette that I felt like I was reaching for on an everyday basis, especially the shimmers. I was not afraid of a lot of the shimmers to go into the office with. But if you look at this palette, you got half of a bright color story and the other half is like very, very grungy, very Halloween, very fall timed theme, and everything just performed really well together. And these shimmers looked so much better on the eyes than I feel like they look in the pan. And the 2 satin shades, which I think are like this pink one and kind of this green one over here, they were even beautiful to pair with some of the other mattes to wear as like matte shades. And I have 2 other Gourmande Girls palettes in my collection. Actually, I have 3, but only 2 other ones have I tried so far. I have to say this one is my absolute favorite. Just something about the way that this went on was delicious, and the way that everything wore throughout the day. These mattes are I'm probably just gonna leave that in. Look at him. You think he's trying to figure out like which way? Should we just keep filming with him in the window? He's like painting a couple of spots on the roof. If you ask him to do something, he won't. But if you don't ask him to paint the house, then all of a sudden he'll start painting the whole house. All right, let's just keep rolling with him in the background. Anyway, the mattes here are super buttery and creamy and soft, and it is my favorite formulation of the Gourmande Girls palettes that I have. I feel like this is actually very different than the other Gourmande Girls palettes that I have tried. It's just that the mattes and the shimmers, they're very different than the last matte and shimmer palette that I had together, because the other one that I've tried was a full shimmer palette. So I really enjoyed this. It's on sale right now on their website. It was like $25 and then they knocked it down to $19.99. I think this was really good quality and I would recommend it to you guys. All right, coming in at 3rd place is a palette from Ensley. This is the Flutter palette. She released the Flutter and Flourish palette, and these were smaller than the ones that I have, or the one that I have, the Cold Moon palette, which is a much larger, I think 18 pan, or maybe it's like 21. It's many more pans than this. I think this one was a lot more affordable than the $88 that those 21 pans are. So I felt good about getting this one because I do like her formula. The Cold Moon that I tried, the mattes are very desaturated. They're very like dusty and ethereal kind of, but the shimmers were all kind of the same. They're very chunky. And in the Cold Moon palette, I felt like there was some repetition. So I've held off on buying other palettes from her, but this particular one, I felt like was a little bit different. She had some colors in here, but I like that there's like a smoky black and a purple and a gray. So I felt like, look, I could even use half this palette on an everyday basis and the other stuff I can use for fun. But I loved this palette so much more than the Cold Moon palette. The shimmers here I felt like were so much better. Every one of them I felt like I could wear every single day. I liked that things were a little bit more desaturated. They were gorgeous, gorgeous, you guys. The shades Moonflower and Golden Hour are delicious. Dewdrop, Mystic Meadow, I mean all of them. The only one that's like super chunky is the Pixie Petal one, but even then I feel like that can be rubbed out. And I feel like every one of these shimmers just pairs really well with every one of the mattes, and they work well together and they blend perfectly. They smoke out really nicely. The quality was never the issue with Ensley, other than that the shimmers were always just like super duper chunky and Foily's not always everybody's preference, and I totally get that, but I feel like there's some softer shimmers in here overall, even though there are some chunky ones too. It's the way that this just looked on the eyes was stunning. The way that it performed, how easy it was to create an eye look, and it was a lot more useful throughout the week than I thought it was going to be. All right, this next one, I do have a discount code with as well. Again, listed under my affiliate codes in the description box. This is the Skulls and Roses Metallic Multi-Chromes eyeshadow palette from Kima Cosmetics. This again is a formula that I literally can't deny. Kima Cosmetics always gives different formulations and different shimmer types. You've got midtones, you've got lights, you've got really deep shimmers, you've got black base shimmers. Like, the variety here is crazy. This color story is darker, so you kind of have to like a darker color story, or I could see this just not being people's preference. And also, not everybody likes those black based shimmers like I do. I think they're absolutely gorgeous. This palette does what I think that it should. In a palette this size, it goes very light to very dark. I love that the black is super black and it smokes out really nicely. You get some neutral looks here too if you want. This one down here in Dazzle is delicious on an everyday basis. It's like nice and sparkly. The matte formula blends perfectly. It is pretty pigmented. It's the fact that the shimmers give you so much variety. There's so many different kind of formulas and tones of shimmers in here that it just keeps me coming back for more. I can just do so many things with this. I like a deeper color story because I like a deeper outer corner. So color stories like this don't make me mad. I think the only thing I don't love is probably this like orangey red shade down here. I didn't love that in this particular palette because I feel like this is kind of an overall dark, grungier, smokier color story. But yeah, the shimmer formula here is delish, you guys. These are like absolute butter. Some of them are thin. They're all multi-chromed, except maybe Dazzle. I don't know if Dazzle is a multi-chrome, which is this one right here, but it's kind of just more like sparkly, but it's a shade I've worn all by itself, like as a one and done shadow. It's just buttery, it's just creamy, it's just delicious. I love Kima Cosmetics. Keep it coming. All right, the number one palette that I have on my eyes today, and I did a super duper neutral look with it. I was just feeling something neutral. I do bright looks on my channel all the time, but this was from Glaminatrix Cosmetics. It's the Nocturnal palette. This is the mini version. I never tried the big or original version, so this is the only one I've ever tried, and as I understand it, the pan sizes got smaller. This palette just does so much for me. It really does. I hate to get all excited and weird and change octaves, but there's bright colors in here, there's smoky colors, and there's everyday neutral colors. And that to me says a lot when it can be super versatile. I love it, I love it. And I'm actually a fan of smaller pan sizes in general. The shimmer formula though is delish. I'm wearing 4 shades on my eyes today, so I used this shimmer all over, you can kind of tell, which again is like very useful for an everyday look. And then the black is in the outer corner. This is a transition, and I think I used this one on the lower lash line. So I just used my neutral corner. That's pretty much it. But like, I have done a look out of the middle section. I haven't really done a complete look out of these 4, but that's kind of how I see it. I see it in like these quads. And I feel like that just makes so much sense for a palette this size, that you can like put a look together with a quad, you know, with just like one section, and it's like super cohesive. But you compare some other ones together, these shimmers are just delectable, delicious, delightful, can be worn. I love every single one of the shimmers. I don't hate any of them. They're super duper creamy mattes. They're just, everything here is delicious. Again, another palette I just kept coming back for more, and I was doing different things with it. Like in looking at this, doesn't it kind of look like a brighter palette? And then you're like, oh, you could do a smoky date night look with it too. Okay. You can just do so many things with it. And again, it has kind of like a deeper black base shimmer. And this, you guys, is a green to brown flip. It's such a beautiful shimmer overall. And it doesn't even look like it in the pan. And this Milky Way one too, they're all so delicious. I'm sorry, they're delicious. I love this. I have ranked some of my Glaminatrix palettes at the top before. This is not the first time a Glaminatrix palette I think has landed in number 1 in my rankings, just because the formula here is so good. It blends itself, it doesn't overblend, and I usually love every single one of the shimmers. They're all just unique. There's no repetition. I never get any performance issues out of them. I always love the packaging. This actually feels like leather. I feel like, there he comes again. I guess there's a lot of painting that needs happening right underneath the window. Or he just really loves me and likes to keep his eye on me. Either one, it's fine. But this one feels more like leather than like actual faux leather. It probably isn't, but anyway, that is my number one spot, you guys. I will have all of these linked in the description box to the ones that I can link for you. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope that if you guys are not currently subscribed, that you consider subscribing so you can stick around for my full ranking of all of the palettes that I tried for 2024. This guy, he needs to just quit. I hope you enjoyed our drop-in guest, my husband Aaron. I'd love to hear your thoughts of some of these palettes. If you've tried any, if you're interested in trying any, you guys, I'm out of here. And I just never have done an outro with my husband just hanging out in the background. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm out of here. Yeah, I hope to catch you all in my next one. Bye, guys.